The truth of the matter is, you want your art to be hip and seem cool to people. You want people to like the stuff. But a great deal of what passes for hip or cool is now highly, highly commercially driven. And some of it I think is important art. I think The Simpsons is important art. On the other hand, it's also, in my opinion, relentlessly sort of corrosive to the soul, and everything is parodied and everything is ridiculous. Maybe I'm old, but for my part, I can be steeped in about an hour of it, and then I sort of have to walk away and look at a flower or something. I think if there's something to be talked about, that thing is this weird conflict between what my girlfriend calls the inner sap, the part of us that can really wholeheartedly weep at stuff, and the part of us that has to live in a world of smart, jaded, sophisticated people and wants very much to be taken seriously by those people. But it's not at all clear to me how to marry them. And I don't think it's been at all clear since about the 1950s. And I just think it's where we're at.
In 1993, David Foster Wallace published the article A Univus Plurum, Television and US Fiction. It was an article that criticised what Wallace saw as the dominant culture of postmodern irony and cynicism. The problem he saw with this is the fact that irony alone is not enough. It is singularly unuseful when it comes to constructing anything to replace the hypocrisies that it debunks. But despite the fact that irony offers nothing constructive, it had remained dominant in popular culture, as anything that operated outside of the postmodern, cynical attitude would have to face the yawn, the rolled eyes, the cool smile, the nudged ribs, the parody of gifted ironists. In other words, people are afraid of irony, afraid of how they'll be seen without it. A layer of irony can protect anyone from the mockery they would risk were they to be sincere. Wallace concludes by saying that perhaps the next rebels, those that will succeed the postmodern rebels, will be anti-rebels, who are unashamedly sincere. It was this article that started me thinking about irony and cynicism and sincerity, postmodernism and what could be after it. This article led me to making this film as a way to explore my thoughts and engage with what I had found as I read further into the topic of postmodernism and post-postmodernism. With Wallace as a starting point, I began searching online for further material. I researched him and his work, his ideas and his opinions. I looked up the postmodern television shows that he criticised. I saw the cynicism, the nihilistic disinterest brought about by postmodern irony, as Wallace had described it. But I also saw the fear of sincerity and sentiment, the fear of being mocked for caring.
Ryan, look out! No, Brian!
Oh my God! Brian, can you hear me?
Holy crap, what the hell happened? That guy sucked.
The reason that Wallace's article took my interest so strongly and compelled me to look further was because something clicked when I read it. The dichotomy between cynicism and sincerity reminded me of a trend I had noticed in TV shows I had been watching. There seemed to be an influx of sitcoms that were sentimental and emotional. This emotion was often heightened by the fact that it could catch you off guard, being presented in stark contrast with absurd humour. But Wallace's article made me realise was that this contrast is not just between the show's humour and its sentiment, but also between my expectations and what I actually experienced. A show like BoJack Horseman would appear at first to be like any other adult cartoon, quintessentially postmodern and ultimately disinterested in taking itself seriously.
Why didn't you refill your bird feeder, huh?
Yeah, who's a bird gotta blow to get some seed around here?
But BoJack Horseman is different. BoJack Horseman takes itself seriously. It is unafraid of being mocked. It is a work of one of Wallace's anti-rebels. this led me on to postmodernism. At first, none of the theories I looked at seemed relevant. In fact, they appeared to be not so much postmodern, but more modernism intensified, and they certainly did not lack cynicism. But eventually I found a theory that clicked with me, just like Wallace's article. Metamodernism.
Been through the desert on a horse with no name. Felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for giving no pain.
A theory developed by Timotheus Vermeulen and Robin van den Akker. Metamodernism is founded on the tension between modernism and postmodernism, sincerity and irony, enthusiasm and cynicism. Now that I had a name for it, I started seeing it everywhere. Not just television, but in film and music. I found articles on metamodern authors and artists. Now that I had a firm grasp on the theory, the next big moment was when I found the person who I felt perfectly encapsulated everything I had come across so far. Someone I considered to be the first metamodern star.
Oh no, I hope I don't fall. No. Yo, who that boy? Who him is?
Vermeulen and van den Akker describe metamodernism as operating like a pendulum. Tyler, the creator, is that pendulum. He swings from irony and sincerity, blurring the lines between personas and his personal life. Two recurring concepts with metamodernism are post-irony and new sincerity. Tyler has been an example of both at different times. An example of this is the way he has talked about sexuality. Tyler has never shied away from controversy. His lyrics have often been called homophobic, and it can be hard to argue with that. But then, maybe it's ironic. While his lyrics have said one thing, he himself has often said the opposite. In fact, he has said that he himself is gay, but this has been dismissed as ironic jokes. But are they ironic? This uncertainty of irony is post-irony. Is he homophobic? Is he homosexual? Is he neither? Then, in 2017, Tyler appeared to be more sincere. Rather than using confused irony, he appeared to use new sincerity. In his newest album, he openly referenced being homosexual. Now it finally seemed that the people knew the truth. But there are still doubts. He's never said anything publicly. People were waiting for some kind of official announcement, but it never came. But maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe the refusal to settle on irony or sincerity says enough. It says you don't need to settle on one thing or another. You don't need to know when he's being serious or not. He has been sincere enough to undermine those who have called him homophobic, but he doesn't feel the need to let every personal, sincere feeling be shared with the world. This refusal to settle on any one thing reflects the metamodern structures of post-irony and new sincerity. You can never be too sincere. You can never completely escape irony when it has become such an expected part of our culture. But if you want to believe it, then you can find the sincerity there.
The man with a pickle plan, niggas know the deal. When I set a carnival, I bet I get 100 mil. Next line I have, I'm like, whoa. I've been kissing white boys since 2004.
So if this sincerity is there to be found, there must be someone looking for it. Tyler, the creator, is many things. Rapper, record producer, director, fashion designer. One thing he definitely is an internet star. Whether it's his own material, or others reinterpreting and recontextualizing it, Tyler's presence is noticeable. So when you look at this with metamodernism in mind, you start to see what kind of internet star he is. His face has become synonymous with a new community of online content makers and sharers, the Wholesome Movement. The Wholesome Movement rejects the irony, the cynicism, the nihilism of so much of the internet's content. The Wholesome community preaches positivity. And Tyler isn't the only figure associated with it. SpongeBob stands out as the main figurehead, representing the childlike naivety, similar to the naivety described by Vermeulen and Van den Acker, as well as the themes of childhood described by James McDowell in his work on the distinctively metamodern quirky cinema.
I said, okay, my infatuation it translating to another form of
So, as I came across more and more examples, I saw that metamodernism could be seen everywhere. I was convinced that I had come across the correct theory to understand our current times, but all the theory left me with a question: why now? I started to think that it had always been there in some way. Such intense cynicism seems hard to sustain. And I thought about some supposedly postmodern TV shows that at times have such heart and care for its characters that they could easily be called metamodern. But these were often the exception. This sincerity and resurgence of modernism has been noted by many to be a 21st century phenomenon. Why? Douglas Kellner has suggested that irony was no longer useful after 9/11. Such a horrific event could not be engaged with ironically. Perhaps that was the turning point. While some have suggested this, it's not that simple. Vermeulen and Van den Acker even suggest that it solidified postmodernism in a way. While you can't talk about 9/11 with irony, for some the solution was to not talk about it at all, to fall back into the safety of ironic detachment. This could explain why a show like The Simpsons has seemingly become more and more postmodern over time. There was a time when The Simpsons could tactfully and emotionally engage with a subject like suicide and depression.
There he is! Don't do it, Dad!
Boy, this intersection is dangerous. Someone ought to put a stop sign here.
Oh, Homer! How could you think of killing yourself? We love you.
Yeah, Dad, we love you.
Kill myself? Killing myself is the last thing I'd ever do. Now I have a purpose, a reason to live. I don't care who I have to face. I don't care who I have to fight. I will not rest until this street gets a stop sign.
Now the show is heartless.
And that's why libraries use newspaper rods.
Whoa! I know CPR. I took a class where you do chest compressions to a Bee Gees song. How deep is your love? How deep?
This reaffirmed postmodernism couldn't last. The cynicism could not be sustained. The difficulties faced by people around the world could no longer be ignored. As the years went by, the sense of crisis spread. As David Foster Wallace had said, irony provides no answers. Now we needed answers. We needed sincerity. Vermeulen and Van den Acker have noted the role played by climate change, economic recession, and more in energizing this movement away from outright cynicism. But a lot has happened since they wrote their first article. As events unfold, I think there will be a lot more to say. While people have been searching for answers to our problems, for an escape from the world's crises, things have only appeared to get worse. Things are piling up, and the answers seem to be getting harder and harder to find. The rise of populism is a symptom of our time. At first, this made me think that we need a metamodernist attitude now more than ever. And we do. We can't face these difficulties. We can't reconcile our differences without sincerity. But then I also realized that perhaps these divisions are in themselves metamodern. These populist movements rely on nationalist rhetoric, a kind of nationalism associated with modernism, rejected by postmodernism after the last wave of populism. On the other hand, their embracing of post-truth feels very postmodern, a kind of postmodern relativism that allows all facts to be rejected and all lies to be defended. Metamodernism may have created wholesome communities. It may be allowing people to engage with their emotions, to sincerely care about what is happening in the world. But so much of this rejection of postmodernism is down to fear. The fear of being mocked has been overtaken by a fear of losing your job, your home, your identity. People are desperate to find something solid and dependable. And what is worrying is that so many people are trying to reclaim the most dangerous things that postmodernism had destabilized. Nationalism, tribalism, toxic masculinity. The reconstruction of previously deconstructed ideas is metamodern. Postmodernism has failed. But that doesn't mean that metamodernism must fail too. Coming out the other side of my research, what strikes me is that metamodernism is a unifying idea in a time when people feel so divided. We are all searching for the same answers to the same problems. We are trying to reconstruct our fractured world, our fractured selves. We may find some solace in different places. We might find some of those places abhorrent. But metamodernism shows that we have a common ground. And if we can find a way to merge the best of modernism and postmodernism, of positive sincerity with some healthy skepticism, then surely there is hope for all of us. We are all looking for sincerity, authenticity, truth, something we can trust and hold on to. If we can work together, we can reconstruct modernist optimism, enthusiasm, and hope.
Don't wanna be free of hope, and I'm at the end of my rope. It's so tough just to be alive when I feel like the living dead. I'm giving it up so plain, I'm living my life in vain. And where am I going